Hey guys, welcome to EuroLeague Fantasy Talks. In this episode, we will talk about BasketNews EuroLeague Fantasy and our preparation for round 15 of EuroLeague. We will, of course, focus on the budget growing aspect, but also pay some attention to fantasy points. And this is how my team performed in the last round. So I got a total of 144 fantasy points and got 1.2 million budget growth. Even if Hayes Davis, Carson Edwards, and Jabari Parker didn't perform so well on the fantasy points aspect, they still grew our budget by a total of 60k. Hayes Davis didn't make so many shots. He made only 2 out of 8 shots and got only 2 rebounds, so that was a tough night for him. Carson Edwards was in a similar scenario where he had surprisingly low amount of shots. He only attempted 8 shots and made only 1 of them. He also had 4 assists, but at the end of the day, he got minus 2.2 fantasy points. Jabari Parker had more shots than all those guys. He played more than 55 minutes, but he made only 4 out of 18 shots, which resulted in 1.8 fantasy points. So that's, of course, nothing amazing, but 40k, so we take it. Our guys did well. Maledon, Petrushev, Milutinov. Unfortunately, Milutinov lost, so he got his fantasy points deducted by 10%. Let's check how many fantasy points each of these guys need in round 15 not to drop their price. Maledon, Petrushev, and Milutinov were all good because even if minus fantasy points, they will not drop their price. Petrushev and Maledon, it's even more than minus 20 safe for them. Jabari Parker and Fournier are decent, so I wouldn't worry about them. We should overcome those fantasy points marks. When it comes to Lidey, James, and Poirier, it's around 14-15 fantasy points that we need to score, not to drop in price. Of course, that is harder, but they still can do it, I would say. Although when it comes to Hayes Davis and Edwards, that is harder because they need to score more than 22 fantasy points and 25 in case of Hayes Davis. I would recommend to consider these guys, and especially that Wade Baldwin is back, and in Edwards' case, maybe it's Honorable Bitim that is affecting him, although in German league he had more minutes again and many shots. So let's see how a Carson Edwards situation will develop in the future rounds. Let's go and see which trades I will gonna make. I decided to sell Nigel Hayes Davis. I'm selling Hayes Davis because I want to make space for a big return to our team, but also because Wade Baldwin is back. I'm pretty sure he will still have great nights, Hayes Davis. There is now better forwards on the market. Another guy that I will sell, it will be Vincent Poirier. I'm selling Poirier because I also want to have a better player in the center position, better matchup, and also better budget growing stats, because as we saw, Poirier needs to score more than 14 fantasy points not to drop his price. And I will also sell Mike James. Let's see how it will develop for Mike James with the new coach Spanulis. I think he should be fine, but he doesn't have great budget growing stats, and also the matchup is against Olympiacos, which have great defense. So I just simply don't want to risk it, and I would rather get a more reliable guard for the round 13 at least. Alright, so for forward, of course, we have to get Vezenkov back because he's back from the injury. He already played in the Greek league. His matchup is against Monaco, but even if Vezenkov needs to score 19.4 fantasy points not to drop his price, I still expect for him to score around 20, if not more. Although it's a double week, so he might get limited minutes. So let's see, but we're definitely getting him back to our team, most probable MVP of the season. And for my guard, I will get TJ Shorts. Of course, we have to get also TJ Shorts back, so it's a reunion of these two guys in my team. But the main reason why I'm getting Shorts is, of course, because he will play against Maccabi, and Maccabi have the worst defensive rating, so he is a must-have in this round. And also, even if he scores minus 5.5 fantasy points, he would still not drop in price, so he's also good for price growing. And for my center, I will pick Walter Tavares. And I'm getting Tavares because he will play against Asvel, who really don't have a good defense in center position. They have offense there, but not so good in defense. So Tavares has all the good cards to have a great night in Villeurbanne. So this will be my team for round 13 on BasketNews EuroLeague Fantasy. I'm going with Shorts, of course, with the defense that Maccabi has. Shorts should have crazy numbers, in my opinion. The only concern is, of course, the double week, but I will just let him cook. And then we also have 5 other guys for Friday. So then I'll probably go with Petrushev or Vezenkov as my captain. And let's now go check how much fantasy points players need to score not to drop their price in each position. And we will start with 10 best centers by fantasy points average at the moment, except Bolomboy, who is injured. So we are not sure if he's coming back yet or not. So let's see about that. But Lesort needs to score 11.2 fantasy points not to drop his price. Milton Tavares we already know. That's why I picked Tavares. He has one of the best price growing stats among centers. When it comes to Booker, Vesely, and Rivera, we need to score around 25 fantasy points, not to drop in price. So it's not really great picks when it comes to price growing. Otherwise, of course, you can pick them for fantasy points if you think that they will do great. Sacco is going lower and lower, so he's not doing so great unless Laverne would get absent for one reason or another. I think that's the only case where Sacco can go to his bigger numbers again. Donta Hall needs to score 0.5 fantasy points not to drop in price. And Geoffrey Laverne is good with minus 14. So even if he scores minus 14, he should still not drop his price. So these are the stats for the 10 best centers. So let's go to forwards. So these are the 10 best fantasy points average forwards at the moment. Of course, they change every week depending on their performances. Vezankov is back 19.4, as we already know. Mirotic, after the crazy performance, is actually good for price growing. With minus 4.4, he would still not drop his price. Moneka needs to score 16.5 fantasy points. Horde and Diallo are good picks. Otherwise, Shengeli and Juancho are not that great for price growing. Sadikerskis is average, so maybe not the best pick for price growing, but he's alright to pick and move forward. For top 10 fantasy points average guards, we have Shorts, Campazzo, and Maledon in top 3. They're actually all good, including Okobo for price growing. Punter, as I mentioned in the previous video, and you saw, even if he got 22.5 fantasy points, he still dropped his price. He still reduced budgets for some players, and now he needs to score 31 fantasy points not to drop in price. So again, not a great pick still. We might need to wait a couple of rounds if we want to grow price on him. Kendrick Nunn needs 17 not to drop his price. Carson Edwards we already know. By the time I'm recording this video, it's not clear if Larkin will play, so check more towards the deadline when fantasy teams lock in. But in case he would play at least 1 second, he needs to score 17 fantasy points, of course, when he needs to play more, not to drop in price. So then his price would be adjusted. So in case you want to Larkin, that's his stats. And Carlick Jones is good with 7.6. And let's now go check picks that are not necessarily best for fantasy points, but we definitely have best price growing stats for round 13. So in the center position, Laverne is actually best with minus 14.4, Sorkin with minus 10, with Vero back, Vinian Gabriel playing, and Jalen Hort, he might get back to his limited role, so I'm not sure if he's a great pick for fantasy points, but he will still grow your budget in the next round. Shanley's doing good with minus 9.5, he would still not drop his price. Brandon Davis is also a decent pick with minus 2.8. Yusufa Fall minus 1.2, Donta Hall 0.5. Mustafa Fall needs to score 1.3 not to drop his budget. These are the best forwards for price growing for round 13, and it's Petrushev, Diallo, Repekia, Clyburn 3.7, Colson 3.6 not to drop their price. And for the last is guards, and Maledon, Lonnie Walker, and Okobo have the best stats when it comes to guards actually, and Obst is minus 13 together with Giga Samar from Alba. And Dobrich and Campazzo were around minus 10 we need to score not to drop in price. Even with minus 6, Rodrigo Boba would not drop in price, and Sirvidis needs to score more than minus 5 fantasy points not to drop in price. So these are the price growing stats for round 13 on BasketNews EuroLeague Fantasy. I hope I had made it at least a little bit easier for you guys to decide on your lineups. Otherwise, for more content on EuroLeague Fantasy, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.